Hello, great thinkers, and welcome back to the Think Great Experience. I'm Erik Thurwenger, and I am so excited you're here today because I have the very fortunate blessing of being graced with so many amazing people on this show and people who inspire me and motivate me. And I know that it has the same impact for you. And today I have two people who are true heroes to me. They have a very powerful, very compelling story that parallels a lot with my own personal story. And so what they are doing by sharing this is just phenomenal. And it is truly designed to inspire people and to get them to think differently about their circumstances. And I am joined by Judy and Jon Shewell today. And they are coming to us from Arizona, where your weather is far better than ours here in Minnesota. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the Think Great Experience.
Oh boy, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for such a nice introduction. It's mutually, it's our honor to be able to spend time with you and your audience.
Well, we are all excited to hear from you today. And, we were connected through a mutual friend, someone that I've known for a long time. And I was able to be on a podcast that she hosted, Lisa Varga. And her story parallels ours a little bit too, right? So there's some similarities. But I wanted to just give you the opportunity to share a little bit about your story because as I prepared for this show and I read more in depth of what you've experienced in life, I was just humbled. And I just want to start it off with the year 2018. What happened in that year? What part of your story began at that time?
Well, I'm the lucky one to go first, I guess. Keep me on track as far as the dates go or the months go. But in 2018, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so it was kind of a surprise, but wasn't something that I felt like was, unmanageable or something I couldn't overcome. And so we began our journey that way. And then you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So it was May. I remember the dates very specifically. May 22nd, we get this diagnosis. And all of a sudden the word cancer enters directly into your world. We all know people that have had it or have friends that have it, people that have been, victorious and overcome it. And we all know people that have, died from cancer. And so there's quite a spectrum of emotions. Where does your emotions land? And I have to say, initially I thought about, oh my gosh, what would I do without Jon? We've been together, over 30 years. Well, we just celebrated our 35th anniversary this month.
Congrats.
So, thank you. So this was 3 years ago. So, it was just, we would have been at 31 then, not quite to our 32nd anniversary. And I'm like, wow, I can't even picture my life without him. This guy, we just have to, this has to be okay. We have to figure this out. So you kind of go through initial shock. Then you think, oh my gosh, what if? And then it's like, but wait, we have our faith, and my faith in God is way stronger than any diagnosis, and our faith in God was. And we had been doing a devotional that year since the beginning of the year, the Jesus Calling devotional by I can't even think of her name, Sarah Young or something.
I think that's right.
And it's like, it's a really cool devotional. So it's put in as though when you read it, as though Jesus is talking directly to you. And it talked a lot about, being in his presence, his peace, having, experiencing the peace of the Lord and God's joy. And that really helped give us a foundation for where we needed to land in our faith when we got, Jon's diagnosis. And another part of our story prior to this is for years before, Jon has been dealing with chronic eye disease and glaucoma and retina disease. So at this point, he had already had, I don't even know, at least 10 eye surgeries, and probably. And a few months before his diagnosis, like 2 or 3 months before that, he actually had to give up driving because his vision wouldn't allow it. So, we've always, improvised and adapted to things. And so I could drive. That was just the way it was.
Yeah.
So then he gets his diagnosis now.
And now you became a caregiver.
Exactly.
So at that point, as soon as that happens, then, like when Gina was diagnosed, my wife, and you become a caregiver at the same time, one becomes a patient, one becomes a caregiver.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beauty of having, that relationship, to be able to lean on and depend on
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
But then now I had been I can get myself in this mindset of, oh, I'm busy, I'm working, I got to do this, I got to do that, and
Yeah.
compartmentalize things. And I will take things sometimes and like, oh, I'll just deal with that later. Well, I'd already scheduled, I'd gotten my little notification that it was time for my annual women's exam. And so I had one scheduled for the 13th of June. And I kind of had a wake-up call a few months before that. And this is another kind of cool thing, because so you go back to Mother's Day of 2017. This wonderful guy here, my husband, got me a gift certificate for a massage. And
Nice move.
yeah, good move.
Yeah.
But I was in this mindset of, I'm busy. Well, I'm going to get it after I'm done with this. Why I didn't just go and do it whenever is beyond me. But I had this mindset that things needed to be taken care of before I took care of myself.
Mhm.
And so finally, it was early in 2018. I'm like, I'm going to go schedule this massage. And literally, it's less than a mile from where we live. And I go, well, the lady had retired and moved away. And
Oh,
so
no.
I'm like, okay, this was a life lesson. Like, take time to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, my appointment on June 13th, the old me would have said, you know what? I'm going to wait until we get done with John's surgery. And then
Mhm.
maybe I'll just reschedule it for, September or something like that. I'm going to take care of him first. But I didn't. So I went into my appointment, and my gynecologist is doing, the breast exam, and I'm laying on the table, and she pauses and she says, here, give me your hand. I feel a little lump. Well, she shows me and says, we needed to do then a diagnostic mammogram and ultrasound. So I got in for that like right away. And the radiologist then at the ultrasound says, I don't like the way this looks. We need to do a needle biopsy. And I got into that right away.
Yeah.
And then within 2 weeks, I had my diagnosis of invasive ductal carcinoma. And so on June 27th, now I'm diagnosed. Now, my first thought is, okay, I got to take care of this because Jon needs me. I have to take care of Jon.
Sure.
And so
now you became a patient and Jon became a caregiver.
And we're both
Yeah.
caregivers and patients at
Yeah.
the same
Yes.
time.
Yeah, different roles, but role reversal kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Were you
Jon,
ever just scratching your head and saying, what is going on right now?
Well, we knew pretty much right up front, especially once Judy was diagnosed, that this was not just about us having to go through cancer. This was a bigger picture thing. God was going to use us and use our story somehow to provide encouragement and faith to others. And so having gone through the first part of the year, going through that devotional and everything, was actually a good preparation for us, because it helped us have a mindset of trust in the Lord, of just faith that he's got us. He's always there regardless of what happens. So I think that's kind of where we were, at this point.
Yeah.
Well, when I got my diagnosis, though, it was like we always sit out on our patio in the morning and have coffee. And
Yeah.
so I sit there and we're sitting there and I look at Jon and I go, this isn't about us. I said, this is about something God wants to do in us and through us.
Yeah.
Really,
So you had that clarity right from the beginning, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We never felt like, oh, this is so awful. This is so
Yeah.
unfair, why us? We never, ever. And even to this day, I mean, why not us? I mean, if babies can be born with cancer, what makes us somebody that should never get it, what
How,
quality.
how different did you experience, like when Gina got diagnosed with cancer the first time? We hadn't had anybody in our family that had ever had cancer. So we didn't have any experience with it. The only experience I would say we had is what you see in the movies or TV, right? And there's a lot of drama around it. So, and then when it really happens, the real life experience is very different. And we found ourselves, we would have little inspirational talks with each other. So we would get each other refocused. What was it like when you both realized, all right, you have cancer, you both have cancer, you both are caregivers right now? What did you go to as far as techniques to stay focused and positive? So obviously you've got the Lord. Maybe were there specific scriptures, or did you guys come up with your own affirmations? What did you do in your world that helped you to navigate this?
Well, I know we still were reading the devotional, so kind of being centered on, let's just keep this here. Initially, after my diagnosis, Jon's was a little more straightforward. He'd already had a biopsy, and then they scheduled surgery. Mine, all of a sudden, it was like running a small business. I got diagnosed, and they got me in to see a surgeon the very next day, and got me connected then with, an oncologist. So I was going to have an oncologist, a radiation oncologist. They wanted me to do genetic testing. I needed to have a breast MRI and a CT scan. I mean, there was all of this stuff that was just like Zoom within a short period of time. And in fact, the next morning, so it was a Wednesday that I was diagnosed. Thursday, I saw my surgeon. Friday, we're sitting out on our patio, and in the period of about a half an hour, all of these providers called, got everything scheduled. And we're looking at each other going, wow, and then we just began, going through the steps. I didn't have any of the genetic markers like the BRCA genes or anything. My mom had breast cancer over 20 years earlier, but hers was different than mine. She didn't remember what, but hers only required surgery and radiation therapy. So I kind of went into it thinking, well, we'll go. I met with my oncologist, and she said, and we're sitting there meeting, and she goes, and they'd already scheduled for like a month out a lumpectomy.
Okay.
And but I get in to see her, and she goes, okay, and so we're going to start you on chemo this next week. I want to put a port in. And all of a sudden it was like chemo.
That was the change of gears right there. That was.
So was that the Hickman line? Is that what they called that, or did you have a Hickman line?
No, a catheport thing. So it's a little surgical thing, a little kind of port that sits under the skin, and it's and then they're able to avoid having to give you a
that way they don't have to do a fresh IV every time.
Yeah, exactly. And so
now that was for the chemotherapy, correct?
The chemotherapy, yes.
Yeah, so Gina had the tube that stuck out.
Oh wow.
With the ports. So she had a Hickman line, and then I would have to clean the exit wound and flush the line every night with saline.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they would flush the line every time before you start, and then at the end, and then in gaps in between the times, in between some treatments, because I had kind of two phases of treatment. I would have to go in every few weeks and have that maintained. They'd flush the line again with saline, but it's quite involved. So, but that was the moment when all of a sudden it was like chemo, and I'm like,
it became very real.
Yeah. Well, I think I sent you a picture, that little collage I did. Before, my hair was like down to the middle of my arms. It's taken me 3 years to get it back to here,
So let me ask you a question. When you were growing your hair back, did it come back a different color at first?
No, it came back pretty much the same, but I do know people that have had that experience where it came back different, like curly or, different.
Yeah, Gina actually was a kind of like dirty blonde, if you will, right? So she had natural hair color was that. And then she had chemo. She lost all of her hair. It came back, and the first go around, it came back ashy gray.
Oh wow!
And soft as silk. It was the weirdest thing. And then she had to undergo more chemo later, lost it all, and then it came back very dark, almost black, and came back curly until it grew out back to her old natural color. So there's pictures we have of her where you don't know that's her because that's not her original hairstyle. And it lasted for a while, but it actually changed the follicles, if you will, the chemo.
Yeah, and it must be, you know, because chemo is rough stuff. I always say
Yeah.
they give you enough to hopefully kill the cancer, but not quite enough to kill you. You
Yeah.
know, because it's toxic, you know, it's
Yeah.
very, very toxic.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it becomes very challenging. I mean, the oncologist said, you know, when we're going to give her this, and it was about 20 years ago at this point, but they said, you know, keep her positive, keep her spirits high, because when this is going through her system, you know, it's going to take her down to rock bottom. So
Mhm.
there was a lot that we came up with during those time periods to stay motivated, you know, and try and
Right.
find some joy. And you know, so we did our own little affirmations, but we also found scripture that we liked, and we would read that scripture over and over. And interesting enough, Philippians 4:4 through 4:7 was a big one for us, to rejoice in the Lord. And
Mhm.
and as the scripture goes on, it does talk about finding the peace, you know,
Right. The
that
peace of
transcends all understanding. And I
Amen.
think I've heard from so many people in the world of cancer that those scriptures speak out to them on peace, because your world became less peaceful when you're diagnosed.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and you know, it's interesting because I think for myself, mind you, and I had just tried to kind of hang up the hat of the, you know, oh, I'm taking care of everything else, and then I'll finally get to me, you know, and that
Yeah.
realization that I needed to take care of me was really important, because my particular cancer was what they call HER2 positive and estrogen positive, which, you know, it gives it kind of traits that they can,
Yeah.
that HER2 positive means that they're able to treat that as a protein that causes, as I understand it, it was explained to me, it causes the cancer to multiply much more quickly. But they have drugs that target that and kind of
Sure.
disrupt that protein so that that doesn't happen. And then the estrogen, you know, they have drugs that they've been using for years that block that.
Like tamoxifen. Did you?
Yeah, that's what I'm on. Yeah, that's what I'm on for a number of years. But where was I
Well,
going with that?
I just real quick, as far as you know, like affirmations and staying positive and things like that, I'm not recalling anything in particular, except that it was kind of, I feel like it was built into us ahead of time
Okay.
through studying that devotional together.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, we both did our own individual you know, meeting, but just because it referred numerous times to the peace of God,
Yeah.
you know, and that surpasses understanding. And so I feel like there was like a foundation that was there that caught us
Yeah.
when we could have, been really devastated.
And you had started reading a devotional how long ago? Before cancer?
Yeah,
Beginning of the year.
about the beginning of the year.
So you had a good 5 months under your belt of these devotionals.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Isn't it interesting how certain scripture magnifies its importance
Mhm.
when you experience certain things? So you might have read a devotional back in January or in February, and then all of a sudden, once you have cancer in your life, certain ones stand out to you, you know? It
Exactly.
just means more to you in the way it's phrased. And that's how it was for me. You know, these scriptures, just some of them just spoke to me almost like it was written for me, which I know it wasn't, but
No, it was.
I mean me alone.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I know
it's
what you
written
mean.
for everybody. But it's like when you go to church and you're like, I think the pastor's just talking to me right now. There were just some scriptures that stood out, and I would read sometimes I would go back to that same Philippians 4:4 through 4:7, and because it would say, don't be anxious about anything, right? And I would read that every night. I would just keep putting that thought in my head, because you know, Gina was very young when she was diagnosed. She was 27, and I had just turned 30. So she got diagnosed the day after my 30th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't attend church a lot. We didn't read devotionals. We hadn't really found our pathway with the Lord at that point. And so it can be very dark when you don't have the Lord shining the light on that road for you. It's a dark, bumpy, scary, frightening road without him.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, for myself, one of the things that I think about is I had the diagnosis, and so there's a lump. Well, you would think, okay, are you just going to keep, checking it and stuff?
Yeah.
Didn't. Something, and it wasn't like, okay, this is my plan, I'm not going to do this, but something in me wasn't going to give that thing any more life than it already had.
Yeah.
And when I pictured it, I sort of pictured just this void, like it was already like, charcoal and
Like you had already defeated it.
yeah, in my mind, it was just an empty space where it was. And,
Sure.
I just literally, I mean, before my surgery or, and even going through treatment, I wasn't sitting there going, oh, gee, how big is that lump or something?
Right.
And now also another thing too, the lump, you find a lump, you find out it's cancerous, but I can tell you that when my doctor showed it to me, I could feel it, but I'm not so sure that I would have been all that alarmed if I had found it myself. It wasn't like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, this must be the thing.
Right.
But I was sharing just recently with a friend, we've known people since then that have been diagnosed and that are currently battling, diagnoses of cancer. But I said, it's important. I go, cancer may be in your body right now, but don't let it get in your head.
Yeah.
And keep your mindset right. And what should be in your head and your thoughts are, your faith, focusing on
That's right.
the good things of the Lord, what he's doing, what he has done, what he will do, everything about who God is that transcends fear. And I think, keeping it in that perspective helped me to not dwell on it. And then busy going through, and you can probably attest to this, you get so busy doing it and people telling you, oh my gosh, I don't know how you're doing that, or you guys are so inspiring. And I'm like,
it's like telling the gazelle it's inspiring watching it run from the lion. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
I mean, it's like the gazelle doesn't want to.
No.
But it has to. And people used to say the same thing. And not only of us at cancer, but even when they were saying, I don't know how you made it through boot camp. You were getting punched and kicked and choked out and yelled at. And I don't know. They said, I don't know if I could make it through. I said, if you ended up in boot camp, you would do what you have to do to get out. It's not that, I wanted all of that stuff to happen, but you want to get to the other side and you do what it takes to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, how hard, you have a family. How hard was it to share the news with your family? How did they take it?
Well,
When you told them the first diagnosis and the next diagnosis, what was their reaction like? And what was that like for you to have to share the news?
I think it was hardest to tell our daughter, because at the time they were living in Sweden, so they're in Europe.
They're a long ways away.
Yeah, and they have 4
feel helpless. Yeah.
And they're believers too. Our oldest son actually was down here visiting when my diagnosis came in. So, and they were leaving within a couple of days of that. And then we also actually right after that already had a trip up to Oregon planned. So we were up there for a week in that whole crazy interim. And it gave us a chance to kind of personally tell people. But it was, telling our daughter first, he has it. Well, that's her dad, and she's concerned. And all of a sudden, well, guess what?
That's crazy.
Yeah. But also my dad, like 13 years earlier or so, had prostate cancer. So it's kind of interesting. My dad had prostate cancer. My mom had breast cancer. And he went a different route of treatment. He didn't have surgery like Jon did. And my mom, like I said, hers was, surgery and radiation and then tamoxifen for years.
Yeah.
But the other people, like we kept it close initially because there was so much going on and we didn't have time to let everybody who cared know and keep everybody updated too.
You have to keep that circle kind of tight, kind of small.
Yeah.
You cannot keep everybody
initially.
It's hard. What I found is, my wife's had 4 different cancers at 4 different times. And then, she passed away of cardiac arrest and then came back after being gone for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And what I found through all of that is not only am I the caregiver, but I'm the timekeeper. And so people would ask me, you have the same question all the time. Well, what happened? Tell me what happened. And then I forgot who I told what to and how much I told them. It was almost overwhelming to keep up with it all.
Yeah.
And so I agreed that inner circle of friends and family, you have to keep it tight just so you don't go insane trying to figure out who I've told, who I haven't. We had some people help us get the word out there,
Right.
but you can't do it all yourself.
No.
Exactly. And as crazy as social media is, it is a tool when you have like
Yeah.
mass information to get out. But we didn't even share on there until well, I think it was actually on our anniversary, October 3rd of that year was a Wednesday, which was my chemo days, and I was sitting in the chair.
That's right. That's the first time.
And I was like, I think it's time. So posted a picture, let everybody know it's our anniversary. This is what,
This is how we celebrate.
this is how we're celebrating today. And it's, and it's okay. And then of course you get this flood of response. And then you don't realize how many people care about you until you go through something like this. People that you've known from years past, maybe different jobs, different churches, different whatever places in your life.
That's right.
And it was so humbling. And
it touches a lot of people.
It does.
And it was,
it's interesting because when I was in the hospital with Gina after she recovered from being dead and she was in ICU, I did the same thing. I thought, I'm going to put a message out on Facebook because I've called as many people as I can. I can't do it anymore. In fact, my sister-in-law, Sandy, was even telling people, don't go into the hospital right now. Just give them a break. Because I was getting exhausted talking to so many people.
Yep.
So I thought, just like you, I thought, I'm going to send a message out on Facebook. So I get this really heartfelt message about my wife and my best friend. And she's, she passed away of cardiac arrest, but came back. And I'm in ICU with her and she's in a coma. And I send it. And then I'm caught up talking to the doctors, doing my thing. And I check my Facebook and not a single like, sad face, or reply. And I'm like, geez, like, what's going on out there? So I'm like, all right, I'll post it again. I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So it was like a Monday, I do the first one. Tuesday, I do the next one. And nothing. And I'm like, man, I've got some heartless friends. Geez. Well, then I look at the message and somehow I had switched off. Nobody can see it. so I'm posting nothing.
Yes.
And yet I'm looking at it, I see it posted, but nobody could read it. So it must have been private or something. Anyway, so I fix that and I send it. And like you said, the floodgates opened up.
Yeah.
And I think it touches people so much because I heard a stat that 1 out of 3 people get diagnosed with cancer, but 1 out of 1 people are touched by cancer. So I think when we share that, there's a lot of relatability, even when I do presentations and I share our story, even before I talk about leadership or sales or whatever, somebody will always come up to me saying, my mom had cancer or my dad had cancer. So there's that relatability factor. There's an unfortunate relatability when it comes to cancer.
Well, exactly. And for so many people, there's kind of a gasp and a fear response, like, oh no, what if this ever happens to me? Or how can I handle what I do, and so there's that part of it, but then there's just the, oh no, somebody else I know has it, and we, like I said, we have a friend who was just diagnosed, and she called again and was really concerned because she's like found out that it went into her lymph nodes, and she's just still in the process of gathering information and getting her surgery scheduled, everything like that.
And she's relatively young.
She is, yeah.
Okay.
She's still in her 30s. And so it's like, and this is what I feel like. We survived ours. We got through my treatment, through everything I did. I sat in the chemo chair 25 times. And I went through radiation. I had surgery. And then I'm on, ongoing hormone blocking medications, 5 to 10 years. yet it never totally feels like you won. It's like you just happened to get off the battlefield with your life.
Yeah.
Yet there's so many other people that are there that either don't make it or are still out there. And it's like this ongoing war. And it's, yeah, it's good that you had a victory, but it's not like, yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah. It's not like you can go get a new pair of shoes and the old shoes are gone forever.
Right.
Right.
Like it's with you physically and emotionally forever.
Yeah.
You're never the same. I feel you could be greater. I do. I
Yeah.
feel that it gives us a new perspective on life. It gives us a new perspective on family and friends and our spiritual journey. And it gives us a lot of purpose too. I mean, I think some people allow it to do that. But I would say that, you know, one of the most remarkable things about both of you is your perception of all of this. And I got to say, I know our listeners are wondering right now, you know, what is next for both of you? What do you do with the story now? Because it took me a long time. Gina was first diagnosed in 99, and I didn't launch our company, Think Great, until over 10 years later. And that's when I first started sharing our story. We almost hid from it for a long time. We packed it up and put it away. It was too much to go back to. And then people started asking, and we would share it a little bit. And, you know, then I started to take a stage and share it. And then it became an integral part of our business. Even though I'm a business coach, there's still the personal side intertwined with there. And I think there's a lot of relatability there. But it took a long time for me to decide, what is my purpose with this? What am I supposed to do with it? What's coming up? Because this is still very fresh, 3 years ago.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're still getting your hair back.
Yep,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
so what's your plan for the future with your story? Because you also tell it in a very empowering way.
Let me back up just a little bit. In 2019, 19, when our daughter and son-in-law from Europe were here
For Christmas.
for
Yeah.
Christmas time, he made a video, a brief interview of us, and
Okay.
posted it on his YouTube channel that he had established. And it was amazing how many people saw it, and how many people all around the world, people we have never met, probably never will meet, you know, expressed concern and prayers, and, you know, and different things. And that was amazing. And the reason I go back to that is because it feels like this is like what we're doing with you right now is the next step.
Yeah.
And I can't say with clarity what the next one is, but this is seems to be like, you know, here's a format where a lot of people are going to see this, and hopefully the Lord uses it to give people, you know, and where it's going to go from here, I don't know exactly, but we will keep sharing our story.
We're open. I would love to be able to encourage people to come alongside people. And sometimes, and you know this probably just from your own experience, sometimes you're just coming alongside people whose prognosis isn't that good, but you're a friend with them there. I had you know, there were so many people that came along and supported us. We have a friend that we met down here when we moved down here, and she coordinated like meals and everything. She'd bring meals over to us, and then we used to go to the same church as she did for a little while, and her Bible study that we used to go to was praying for us. And there was a young couple in that group. One day I get a call from him, and he's like, you know, we've been praying for you guys for months. This is a couple that
we never met.
Yeah, we've never met them. He says, and God's just put it on our hearts to do something for you. You know, can we bring you something? Can we do something? Well, they brought us over food, and they visited with us. And they've become the dearest friends. This young couple, every couple months or so, they'll plan a little date night for us. And so there's
great.
Things that come out of it. There's people we know that we wouldn't have known from this journey, but we want to reach more people. And I feel like I feel I have some books in me that need to get written about some different things. But I think maybe, you know, this this journey. I feel like when I hear other people's story, it's like, maybe there's a collective effort of people like ourselves, like yourself and your wife. I think we've listened to some of your other podcasts where you've interviewed, well, I remember you interviewing a man whose son, I think it was, had died of cancer.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people that have experiences, and is there something collectively we can do what you can individually, but I would like the opportunity to speak to people, to give them encouragement, to give them hope. I think writing a book would be there.
Well, you have a powerful story. I never intended to be a speaker. I mean, I was in the media world,
Mhm.
and I ran a media company in Southern California, and prior to that, I was in the Marine Corps. So speaking and writing was not something that I wanted to do, but I kept feeling this calling, and I never I think once you start to communicate with people about your story, you start to refine it in a way that they can understand it better.
Right.
It's because it's all up here. And writing the first book was very therapeutic for me and informational for Gina, because I would say, here's what happened. She goes, I don't remember that. Well, of course not. She had radiation. She had a stem cell transplant. She had chemo. So a lot of it was an interesting way for us to rebond, because I was saying, here's some things. I mean, there was dinners that we went to with friends she didn't remember, that she was fully coherent. She was there. And so there was a lot of healing involved in that process. But one of the biggest things for me was I had to learn how to tell a story in a way where I had to be respectful of the people that have lost people. And that was the biggest thing for me, is to go, okay, how am I phrasing this in a way where I can help people but not hurt them?
Mhm.
And goal setting was a big thing for Gina and I. And so when I would sit on the edge of her bed at the hospitals, we would talk about goals and I had to learn to say goals don't cure cancer, but they just give you hope for the future. So you're setting a goal right now, but you accomplish it later. So then that forces you to think in the future. And that can be sometimes tough to do when you have cancer, is because you think about the here and now. So I had to formulate a lot of these things and think about, how can I deliver this message in a way that unifies as many? And so that was a big thing for me. The book was very therapeutic, and then it led to other books, but just refining how to tell the story. Even when I started my own company, Think Great, people said, well, can you tell me about your company? And I said, sure. It's, well, I'm going to be doing it was hard to articulate everything up here,
Exactly. Exactly.
So I always say, I coach a lot of speakers. So speakers will come to me and say, or people who want to be speakers, they'll come to me. And I always just tell them, I said, well, here's the first thing I would work on. If I had an event, I were to introduce you. And I said, here's Judy, and she's got this amazing story. And here's Jon, he's got this amazing story. And here they are. And that first 3 minutes, can you catch their attention in that first 3 minutes? What would you say? Because I do meet a lot of people with great stories, and sometimes they struggle to go, I don't know where I would start. And I always say that first 3 minutes is very important when you take the stage. Can you get them hooked into your story? Can you pull them in? And your story is extremely compelling. There's not a lot of couples that have both been caregiver and patient at the same time. So
Right.
there's a power in that story right there that I feel is like an excuse remover. I feel when people hear your story, one of the things that you're going to do to them, because you do it to me, is empower them to just take steps forward. I heard what you went through, and it's far different than what I went through. And so you empower me. Now it's just a matter of defining, what level of impact you want to make. Is it just some smaller speaking engagements? Is it across the country? At some point, do you have a program behind what you do? Is that what the book is about? There's so many options for you.
Well, and it's interesting, because as you're saying, thank you for those compliments that you've made, but your story had the same impact on us. It was like, wow, here's somebody, he kept it together, he kept her positive, and it's like, we can relate to that. And there's elements to our story, because mind you, we're still dealing with his eye disease. And he at the time was getting injections in his eyes every few months, and was partially blind. And so at the end of, you were going to say, I think 2018, when,
Oh yeah, we didn't.
oh yeah, yeah. We haven't got to the melanoma yet either.
This is a big part. This is kind of a big part of our story because of the effect and the ongoing effect it's had on us.
Yeah.
So in actually on New Year's Eve, so it was December 31st, 2018, and we had our daughter and son-in-law and the kids here from Europe, and
they're 4 children.
yeah. And so I was out here in the kitchen, and I was fixing some dinner, and I had what felt like a bomb go off in my left eye. What it was because I had glaucoma, I had what they call a tube shunt, which is it's a pressure relief mechanism that they implant, and it failed. And so the pressure in my left eye went to 0. And so it's like deflating a balloon. And the back of my eye was pulling what do they call it, the sclera?
The retina and the sclera are connected. The sclera is the white part of your eyeball, and the retina is in the back of the eye, and it's connected by this spongy layer of blood vessels they call the choroidal layer. So it pulls away, and all of a sudden it's bleeding and filling up. I mean, this is probably too much information.
And there was no ramp up on the pain. Like, it just, kicked in, you went 0 to 100 immediately.
I literally felt it and heard it pop. And I grab my eye, and I run to Judy and I say, something has happened. This is excruciating pain, and something's terribly gone wrong. And this is 7-ish in the evening on New Year's Eve.
So we called his retina doctor. He'd seen his retina doctor that day, actually. So we thought, well, maybe we called him. He's got retina doctor and a glaucoma doctor. So we go, I rush him. It was about a half an hour away to where the on-call doctor met us at the office. And he diagnosed it right away. And then they got on the phone with his actual retina doctor. And then he got on the phone with his doctor. And so basically, it was this bleed in the back of the eye. And it was excruciatingly painful. There's nothing they can do to alleviate it. It just has to kind of stop. So it quits bleeding, coagulates, and then it gradually thins out, and the body absorbs it over a number of weeks. But so then the interesting thing is, so I had 12 weeks of my regular chemo, and that was the chemo. I was on 2 different drugs, and that was the one that caused me to lose my hair. I was a lot of pain, all my joints, everything hurt. It was hard to even bend my fingers, and just the collective effects of chemo. So I finished that in October, had my surgery, the lumpectomy, in November. Then we had family in December, and I was scheduled to start radiation on the 2nd of January. Well, I had to put it off a day because he had to have an emergency surgery on the 2nd to go in and just kind of repair damage and stuff in there. And then he had to have another one like on the 11th to go in and create a way for all that to drain in the eye. And then, but meanwhile, I've started radiation therapy, and everybody said, oh, radiation therapy was a breeze for me. It's so much easier than chemo, And so I'm expecting a breeze, and it wasn't. You
experienced the fatigue from it, right? Did you experience?
Yeah, and it was uncomfortable, and you had to lay. They give you this mold that kept my arms like up in the air, and you couldn't move even if something itched or you were uncomfortable, and you had to lay there, and it was 5 days a week for 6 weeks. And I'm working from home. I'm still working.
Employed. I'm retired, but she's employed still. And so she's working, and she's going to go through this radiation, and I become completely dependent.
Like he couldn't do.
I'm bedridden. I can't move. I'm in so much pain. I remember laying there in bed, just praying the Lord would take away the pain for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
just a reprieve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. it was the worst pain I've ever been through.
Yeah.
And yeah, when the doctor went in to finally do the repair on my eye, he said it really looked like a gunshot in there.
Wow.
It was really bad. So
Had you ever had anybody warn you that something like that could happen? Did you know? Not until it happened, huh?
no,
No, not that it would fail like that.
no warning
Okay.
that anything like that could happen.
Yeah, you know, we look back, Gina and I try and remember through all of her cancers, did they ever mention that all of these treatments could impact her heart? And we can't remember it. I'm not saying they didn't say it, but we were caught off guard completely.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we had gone out with some friends. We had some friends over the night before she had cardiac arrest. In fact, that morning, we friend / client, more friend now than ever, but we did a yoga class with her. Gina remembers the yoga class. And then we went to lunch with her or coffee afterward. And Gina doesn't remember that because then the next day, the cardiac arrest had happened. So everything 24 hours earlier, she has no recollection of, almost to the minute. But we started thinking about this because we didn't know why she had cardiac arrest until we got in there and we met with the cardiologist, the oncologist, the neurologist, everybody. And they determined it was from one of the original chemos called CHOP. And it was just very brutal. It was a harsh chemo. And then we tried to think back, you know, did they ever give us a warning that this would happen? And so they caught us very off guard. Maybe not that they would have even known back then. But I was just curious, you know, with everything that you've gone through, you know, did they ever say, oh, by the way, this could happen?
No, this was completely unexpected.
Yeah. Well, and then during that period there, so I had to take him to either every day to either his retina specialist or his glaucoma specialist for about 3 weeks while I'm going through radiation therapy. And this included Saturdays even. And
I mean, your treatments were all crossing over.
Oh yeah. Somebody so you know, you can attest to this too. You know, you start going through cancer treatments and all of these things and diagnostics you have to do, and it starts to deplete you financially really, really quickly. It's a very expensive journey. And that year, somebody had started a GoFundMe for us to help us offset, you know, the medical costs that we were incurring. And so, and it was fortunate because it was just enough to cover the onslaught of what was happening in, you know, the very beginning of 2019 that we didn't expect. So he ended up then so I had 6 weeks of radiation. He had 2 eye surgeries in January. And then once it all cleared up and they could see into the back of the eye, the retina was detached. So in March, he had another surgery to reattach the retina. The beginning of April, they had to go in. So they didn't have anything regulating the inner eye pressure in there. And they put another shunt in a different area of the eye. So in a 3-month period, he had 4 eye surgeries. And by this time I had been working through all this going, yeah, I can do another month, you know, I can work one more. And all of a sudden April hit and I looked at Jon and I said, I'm the kind of tired that sleep isn't fixed. I go, I'm exhausted now. And so I took a leave of absence from work for about 4 months. And by this time, back in February also, at the end of my radiation, then I started the targeted therapy of this drug Herceptin. And so I had that every 3 weeks for 13 infusions. So it was for most of the year of 2019. And then they started me on, it wasn't tamoxifen at the time, it was a Lexatrol, I think it was called, but it's these estrogen blocking drugs. And the combination of those two was causing me so much pain. I would wake up and I could just barely bend my fingers and I hurt all over. And I was like, this isn't good, you know, I'm a guitar player. I gotta have my hands, you know.
So let me ask you this, you know, you go through all of this. And I remember with Gina, there was a year of treatments. And they had actually said it'd probably be about a year. And it was a year to the day. It was really crazy. You know, she had 21 weeks of chemotherapy, didn't work. A month of radiation didn't work. And then finally we got to the City of Hope and did the stem cell transplant. And fortunately that worked. And I remember all of that was tough. The whole year was tough. And then in the City of Hope, after she's there for a month and they do the stem cell transplant and she's near death. They do the stem cell transplant and they say to us, she's in remission. It worked, which is great news. And then they said to me, you can take her home tomorrow. I think it was tomorrow. And I said, what? Like, it just stops. And then we're now in this direction. I found, and so did Gina, that next phase, the recovery phase after you're in remission, was equally, if not more hard, as you're transitioning out and just trying to cope with everything that you went through. Because there's a lot of physicality to it back then, and the mental side. But sometimes that transition journey to get back to some normalcy, that was hard for us. There was a lot of challenges with that. How was it for you when they finally said, you're in remission, you're done? What was that transition like for you?
Well, I remember for myself, once we were done, it was almost like you said, I remember this specifically, like, okay, now all our support is gone. Not that people didn't care still, but it's
Right.
like you'd had all of the support and people pouring
Yeah.
into you. I mean, and the ways people would send you cards, they would send you, gift certificates, meals, just whatever it was, they were sending you love. And then all of a sudden you feel like, wow, now we're done, and that's good. That's what we wanted. But there's almost like this kind of emptiness, kind of like,
It's like the treatment is finished, the struggle is not.
exactly.
Right,
Where
right.
do we go from here?
There's a bit of a vacuum, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're on our own. It's like everybody left.
Yeah.
That everybody did. We had so much support. And there's a term that I think of, so you get all these people that individually do great things. And when somebody is going through something, it's so important to do what you think you're supposed to do. If it's send them a card, then they need that card that you're supposed to give them.
Right.
And that card might be the best thing that happened in their day. If it's making them a meal, if it's just calling them, if it's texting them, whatever it is, if it's, I'm going to pay to have somebody come and clean your house, or I'm going to, come over and do your yard work for you, whatever you feel called to do it, because I kind of coined this phrase in my own mind. It may not be original, but I call it collective greatness. And it's like these collective efforts of all of these people that maybe if they only did one small thing, but you put it all together, and I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It's like this fascinating, amazing thing that takes on an energy and an energy.
Oh yeah, when you're the recipient of that kind of collective energy, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I found that we were very much alone to a large extent during the treatments on the first time. We didn't know how to reach out to anybody, and I don't think a lot of people knew how to help. I always likened it to, a lot of people wear the yellow ribbon to say, I support our troops. And what they're saying is, I want to support our troops. I don't know how all the time. And I think a lot of people want to support, they want to be there for you. They're not always sure how. And the caregiver and the patient don't always know how to say, here's what we need. And they're not sure how to take the initiative. So sometimes they almost miss. But when it does happen and you have people there, because we had some people make some meals or just come by to visit, it's a huge impact.
Well, it truly is. When you think about like a meal, you think, oh, I made dinner. They didn't have to cook dinner. Well, no, not only did they not have to cook, they didn't have to clean up.
That's
They
right.
didn't have to go to the store and go shopping for it.
Yeah.
It saved
They
the
didn't
cost
even
of
have
those
to think about
groceries,
it.
when they've got all these other
That's right.
Yeah.
And so
John, I mean, you're already thinking of a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to think about making dinner.
Exactly.
I know the chemo that Gina was on the first time, I couldn't cook dinner in our apartment because the smell of food made her sick.
Yeah.
So I had to either not have her there or close the doors or whatever the case was. So sometimes for us, when people made meals and sent them over, it didn't fill the house up with all the cooking smell, and that helped out. There's a lot of side effects from all this that aren't really covered in the movies.
Right. There are.
There's the typical scene of usually the lady crying in the shower as she loses her hair, but then there's this whole million other things that happen. So, well, I got to ask, what direction do you want to go in now? What are some steps you want to take? Because I know you're going to inspire a lot of people that are listening. As we air this, I know you're going to resonate with a lot of people, but are you looking to go, into churches? Are you looking to go to charity events? Are you looking for all the above? What would be good venues for you? Like, what doors do you want to have open?
For me personally, all of those things sound like I would go to any opportunity I had to speak and encourage, large or small. It doesn't matter. I mean, if God has an audience and somebody needs to hear, that what we have to share, and He's going to use our experience or our voice to help somebody. I mean, even if you help somebody through a rough day, I mean, you're a friend,
Well,
and
you must share your story now in different capacities, and then you get the feedback.
Yeah.
There's nothing like getting that unsolicited feedback that you help somebody.
Exactly. And to be able to help people that you don't know, that's where going out and sharing your story, more publicly and speaking engagements, because it connects you to people that you wouldn't meet otherwise.
That's right.
He mentioned when we did the interview on our son-in-law's and daughter's YouTube channel. I mean, people then in the comments just shared, their little stories. Oh, my mom had this, or we went through that, or we lost a friend and stuff. And it was so touching to read everything in there, and just to see, how impacted it was, or to have people, we're praying for you in Ireland, we're praying for you, and and you think there's no way that you'll ever. Like, I couldn't have reached those people. Jon couldn't have reached those people had we not gone through what we went through. And your story touched ours. You say our story is touching you. Collectively, our stories will touch many more people the more that we get it out there. So
I just did a speaking engagement this morning, and there was a gal there that said, "I love your story. I heard you speak years ago, and it inspired me then." And so I haven't seen her for years. I didn't know her personally, but years ago I shared part of our story and some of the techniques we use to overcome things, and it's been with her all these years. And so when you hear things like that, you're doing the right thing. I've said often that I learned a long time ago I try not to say everything happens for a reason, because if somebody died or a child didn't make it, I never like to say that alone, right? Well, that happened for a reason, because then they're going to say, well, what was the reason? I'm like, I don't know, but it was a reason. What I do like to say is that we can make a reason out of everything that happens, and we can give that purpose. And that's what I hear that both of you are doing. We may not always know why, and we already stopped a long time ago trying to understand God's plan. But we just try and follow it. But we may not really understand everything, but I'm hearing that you are creating a reason behind what happened, and you're developing that purpose, and you can hear it. I mean, I can hear it in both of you, that desire to share your story, not just to talk about it, but to impact people. And that's powerful. And the world needs more people like both of you. So I'm truly inspired. And that's not what I wanted to do at first. I think I was told it was my calling, and I thought perhaps God was talking to somebody else, because I'm like, well, I don't want to be a public speaker, so I must be hearing somebody else's signals from God. But eventually I took the stage, and it was hard at first. And it was very challenging, because I didn't want to take the stage, but I wanted to make an impact. And then I got really good at telling the story without getting emotional about it. But occasionally those emotions come back up, because it was a real time, and it was a real impact. And you watched someone you care about go through something significant, and it impacted a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very emotional to share the story, and both of you do it so well. I just wanted to tell you, you share your story 3 years later a lot better than I did 3 years after. I'll tell you that much. So you should be on stage.
She's already mentioned, maybe books, speaking and things like that. And maybe I'm a little more like you were. I'm a little less out front, but I think we make a good team.
I do too. Yeah. in many ways, right? I mean, obviously from a marriage standpoint and spiritual standpoint and a caregiver and patient standpoint, you guys are a super dynamic team.
Mhm.
But I believe on stage that you will truly resonate with so many people.
Well,
And
that's
I have to ask you this: if somebody were entering a challenging part of their life right now, and still wanted to achieve greatness in their life, do you have any thoughts for them? Any insights on how they can enhance their mindset right now? What would you focus on most with them, or encourage them to focus on?
well, I would say there's beauty in the journey, even in the darkest times.
Yeah.
And who you see now is a product of many difficult times that we went through. And had we not gone through those times, you might be talking to two nice people that had some ideas about things, but experience really gives you a believable platform.
Yeah.
You can relate to somebody, you can relate to somebody who has gone through something,
That's right.
similar. Like we relate at a level, having gone through, cancer within our marriage
right.
like this, in a relationship, that other people look at and maybe say, wow, I admire how you did that, but they haven't done it. And so maybe it's a difficult time that you're going through, but that time just might be the training ground for one of the greatest things that you've been called to do, and you're not there yet,
And that ties in with what I would say is, if somebody comes into a situation like this where they're faced with a challenge like this, if there's a glimmer of a dream that they've had to accomplish, don't walk away from it. Hang on to it, and find a way to pursue that through your challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that, it doesn't have to just be a health challenge. It could be a financial challenge. It could be this pandemic challenge, right?
Yes.
So everybody's experienced a challenge or two or three recently.
Absolutely.
So I think that those are powerful. Let me ask you this. How can somebody get a hold of you if they want to reach out? Let's say they have an event or they want to learn more about your story. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I set up an email, and I have to go get, let me go get my little note.
Yeah, go get it. It gives Jon and I some one-on-one time.
She has a brand new email just for this purpose. So
Oh, that's so fantastic. Jon, I'm just so impressed with both of you and your desire to share the story for a greater impact in people. That was hard for us to do that. I struggled. I actually had my first speech written out, and I delivered it at an American Cancer Society event for like Relay for Life.
Really?
And I had it all written out. It was my first speech ever. And I got up there, and it was harder to deliver than I ever imagined.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we get this is the big unveil of the new email address.
Yes, the new email address. And I did that just so that I could definitely, receive and not get cluttered and all the other junk that comes in my regular email. But the word grace and fire 7 at gmail.com.
Grace and fire 7.
Yeah, the 7. So grace and fire 7.
Grace and fire 7. Sorry.
At gmail.com.
Okay. Can you explain how did you come up with that? That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Well, because I was like, how would I do like just a little catchphrase that captures the essence of what we're trying to explain? And God's grace precedes any trial we've been through, so there was grace in the midst of the fire or the trial. And I think that, all glory be to God. Because when people,
well, that is a memorable email address.
graceandfire7 at gmail.com. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So that's how you can reach us if you want to reach out or ask any questions. I mean, if somebody that's listening wants us to speak at something, please let us know. We would love to share our story. I thought of doing a podcast because it seems like conversationally that's an interesting way to get parts of your story, too. But that's I'm not sure. We'll see.
It can be a big undertaking, but it's also fun because, here we are speaking together because our team said, we should do a podcast and have
Exactly.
these conversations on greatness.
Yeah.
And I just feel very blessed to know both of you, to hear your story, and the fact that you graced us. There you go, tying that in with your email address. But you graced us with your presence today and your insights. And I would like the idea of maybe tag teaming on an event at some point. I think we have a lot of powerful insights to share.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people out there that we can make an impact with, and a lot of people that need it, maybe even more than they'll ever ask for right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Well, it's been our privilege
absolutely.
and
This has
honor
been
to
great.
get to spend this time with you, and
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
to reach your audience. And God knows who needs to hear our
Mhm.
conversation. And
Yeah. There's
may
somebody out there that this is resonating with right now. There's no doubt about it.
he-
Yeah.
absolutely,
And,
absolutely. And if
and when I
could-
come out to Arizona, we'll have to grab
Oh,
dinner.
please.
yes, please
Yeah.
do. No, that would
Yeah.
be wonderful. But yeah, and
But it's
just
going to start getting colder in Minnesota here, so Arizona's looking really good.
Oh, yeah,
it is.
yeah.
It's wonderful down here. Down. Your wife need to get down to some nicer weather. We're at the time of the year down here where it's perfect for about 8.
I know.
It's gonna be.
I remember it being stationed in Yuma. There was a few months where you're like, all right, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
And then it got really hot.
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. But really, if you could just say anything to anyone listening, it's you're not alone. Don't lose hope, and keep your faith strong, and and don't let it get in your head.
That's right.
Keep it out of your head.
Mhm.
And another thing you said earlier, you were talking about speaking, and I thought when something you're speaking from your heart, it resonates, and it's easy
Yeah.
to pour something out that's coming from your heart, and this very much comes from our heart. So
Well, and we can tell, you're both very genuine and authentic, and you care about people, you can tell.
Mhm.
And I know that you will be making an impact on everybody watching, listening. And I think maybe we need to have a part 2 of this and uncover some more great insights on collective greatness, right?
yes,
Yeah.
And team up a little bit more.
I think
So-
so. Maybe God has a plan for us to
Yeah.
do even more collective great things together.
He
So,
may be having a series in mind for us. Who knows?
who knows? I could be in part of that. So
Yeah.
we-
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate both of you having the courage to share your story and help people achieve greatness. So thank you so much.
well, thank
Thank
you.
you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Talk soon.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll talk to you soon. Be in touch.
We will.